So the date is the 30th of August 2025.
Yep.
My name is Christopher Sparks, and this is the Northampton State Hospital Oral History Project, and I'm here with,
H. Brooks Ryder.
spell your name?
H. Brooks, it's Brooks. Ryder, Ryder.
Excellent, thank you. And we're here at your private residence in Chesterfield. So my first question is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Sledding down Hospital Hill, yes or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I grew up off of the South Street neighborhood
Oh, wow.
before, yeah, so we certainly went sledding over there.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's great to hear. I was off of Old South Street for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was Northampton like then?
Back at Northampton?
Yeah.
In the 1960s?
Mm-hmm.
Entirely different than it is now.
Mm.
More in a cultural way.
Mm-hmm.
It was very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
Schools were spread out. They weren't regionalized, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I think sports were normal and we all played ball and rode bicycles and, you know, just kind of grew up that way.
Mm-hmm.
I used to hitchhike to the high school.
Yeah.
Because I lived way up South Street.
Yeah.
And we'd walk down to by the academy in
Yep.
front of the church.
Yep.
And we used to hitchhike to high school until we got cars.
Right.
And then, of course, once we got cars, we didn't. But I quit high school in 1966 as a junior.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot the hard way fast.
Mm-hmm.
Working and everything. And in the meantime, my mother had moved out of Northampton and went to South Deerfield and got a job in Greenfield.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go up there for a while, and I repeated my junior year at Frontier Regional.
Mm-hmm.
I hated it there. The farm boys were kind of dull to me. And my girlfriend was in Northampton, so I was struggling to go back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, and I knew I was going to have to fight with every guy, so I joined the wrestling team, took it out there, and as soon as I got through that year, I left home. So I was like 17, I left in that summer, went to Northampton. Our family had an old cottage at Laurel Park, and I lived in that cottage for the summer with a couple other guys. We had a hell of a good time, and nobody knew we were there.
Right.
We kind of like slipped in, let's put it that way. We didn't tell anybody, you know. So there was a friend of our family's, distant relative, was Millie Warnick. She was the dietitian at the hospital back then when there was 2,400 patients, and she hired me.
Millie Warnock?
Yes.
Oh, so Millie Warnock has a son, Josh Warnock.
Okay.
Who I went to high school with. We're in the same grade.
Cool. Yeah. They lived down almost to East Hampton, down by Arcadia, down there. Is it Clapp Street, I think? I can't remember exactly.
Near where the old Harley shop used to be.
You go down there.
Roland's.
Right, exactly, Roland's place. So she hired me into the kitchen because I wasn't old enough to go on the wards. You had to be 18 then to work on the psych wards.
Yeah.
So I worked in the kitchen, learned the layout of the whole hospital, and when it got cold in the fall, I got a room in the attendance home and moved over there from the cottage. And so eventually, I don't remember exactly when, but I had to be 18. So I went on the wards.
Yeah.
And they used to call us attendants back then, male attendants. So, and It's funny because if you were a male attendant, you had a key, was a number 38. And you could only open doors with that key to the wards that were male wards. You couldn't open a door to a woman's ward.
Right.
The women had keys that were number 36, and they would work both ways because most of the nurses, of course, the LPNs and stuff, were mostly women.
Right.
So they could go either way. But the men, that was verboten. You didn't go on any of the women's wards.
Right.
So they keyed it that way. So in the meantime, I don't know why, I hated high school. But I had to do something with I learned very hard about work.
Right.
Real fast. So I started going to Greenfield Community College, part-time, night classes. And I wanted to get into the nursing program. So I tried to get all my things out of the way, courses out of the way that I wouldn't have to take while I was in nursing to lessen the load, you know, the load on nursing, because nursing was very hard. And I worked all over the place in the hospital. I got to know the hospital really well, the other nurses. I had lots of friends. You know, I practically lived there. I mean, I stayed in the attendance zone. And my girlfriend, we went to high school, she became an LPN. And she worked there. And she lived in the nurses' home across the street.
Yeah.
She was from Florence, but she lived over there. So, let's see. Well, that was during the Vietnam time. And that in itself was very stressful for us. When you're like 18, 19, and you're not a full-time college student and all that. So, in 1969, I got called up. I had a number 69. I went down to Springfield, and they sent me back. I had polio when I was a little kid, and I have some deformity, residual stuff. It's not painful or anything like that. You wouldn't know it. But they made me what they called 1Y back then. It wasn't, you weren't 4F.
Right.
They could still call you back, but you were deferred for a while. So eventually I got called back, and they did make me 4F. After I went to a specialist in Springfield, and he sent a report in, and then Nixon ended the draft anyway.
Right.
So we all passed through that. I never did go in.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I got into the nursing school and was on the program there. And I worked like weekends and all that while going to school. And in 1971, I was in the middle of nursing school, and I was young and dumb and passionately in love with my wife, and we got married. I was 21. But, and so we had in the meantime, I'm going to nursing school and working, you know, in the summer and vacations, we were working full time. She worked there. So we got an apartment off of Crescent Street by Smith College. And it was a one-room apartment. It was awful. I hated it. I really hated it there. And it cost, like, back then, it was like $90 a month or something like that, right? And we didn't make much money. I only made $5,000 a year then, you know? And so we moved back to the hospital.
Right.
When we moved into the North Home. Married couples.
So wait, on Crescent? I just...
Yeah.
There was an apartment there was like a livable apartment on Crescent Street?
Yeah, there was a big house. It
Okay.
belonged to, there were people called, their last names, I believe, was Bamber, Huey Bamber. It's 57 Crescent Street. I don't know if you knew Geraldine. Did you interview Geraldine Perez before
Not
at
yet.
all?
Nope.
All right. Her husband was a professor at Westfield State, and she was a registered nurse. And I worked with her a lot. And it was just up the street from their house. It's like a quarter mile in from Elm Street.
Okay.
On Crescent. A big old house.
Yeah.
And they normally rented to Smith College girls.
Right.
And that live off campus. But the lady that owned the house was a friend of my mother-in-law's.
Got it.
So we got married. She gave us the apartment.
Got it.
You know, before the Smith College girls came back. But anyway, it didn't work out very good. So we moved back up to the North Home.
Right.
And we lived there for a couple of years. And before we moved here, it was a strange time of life. You know, you'd be working all the time. You know, you didn't have air conditioning or anything in the summer. You'd have the windows open, and you know, you can see the building over there where you work, and the patients are screaming, and you know who they are, and everything else. You know,
Right.
It's just like a nice place for nightmares, I'll tell you. But and so we probably spent more time away to get away than living there. You know what I mean? Whenever you had a chance to go somewhere or do something, well, you're trying to save money to get a house, but you go out, eat and drink and everything else with people, and you blow all your money.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a vicious cycle because you don't want to be there, but at the same time, you're wasting money getting away, you know?
Yeah.
So I had a horse. That was a big thing in my life because I grew up around horses as a kid, and I always wanted to have a horse, you know? And finally, when I was 21 there, I felt like it was a milestone for me to get my own horse.
Yeah.
And I had a motorcycle, but I would ride the motorcycle out to where the horse was to ride the horse.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And go in the woods and get away. And that was how I got, you know, away from being there 24/7. You know, keep your wits about you and not be obsessed with everything, you know. And so, so I graduated in 1972. And I went to work in the geriatric building, G building, you know about that. It was all people over 65 for the Medicare funding. And I had this unit, it was G2, and I was very happy. I liked these old guys. They were good, you know. And half of them, there were 80 men, and half of them could walk and everything, but they were, you know, they had their problems, but they were ambulatory. The other half were all like chair to bed, but they weren't sick as in the way we think sick. They were just debilitated. They were old.
Got it.
They had, you know, arthritis and whatever, besides being depressed, you know.
Right.
So, but I was happy. I had two nurses' aides that worked with me. So there's me and the two nurses' aides, and every day I'd do the meds and all that, and they'd take the guys to the cafeteria and all that stuff. That was good. That was what I wanted to do. So I was only there a short time, and the supervisor comes up to me and she says, I got to tell you something. Miss Eaton wants you to go and work on AP1. And I'm like, what? AP1, you know what AP was?
Yep.
Okay. AP1 was the women's infirmary.
Got it.
48 crazy, sick women. No man had ever worked there. I was the first. I don't know if anybody ever worked there after me either.
Right.
I don't know. But they would always find a way to make you pay your dues because they help you get through school. They let you live this sort of, she had a way of making you pay your dues.
Yeah.
All right. So that was where I paid my dues. I took over down there, worked hard. It was hard work. It just, the women were so sick. They had Huntington's chorea, things like that, pneumonia, everything. And at the same time being really, really out of it. Most of them were really out of it. We had some bad diabetics and so on. And it wasn't easy at all. They had back in those days, they had bed sores that were ulcers. You could almost put your fist in. It was tough. It really was. But it made me tougher. And eventually, I became a head nurse and then a supervisor. I was the youngest person who ever became a supervisor at that hospital. I was only like 23.
Got it.
And I'm in charge of, like 125 employees.
Right.
Like, who's this kid?
Yeah.
So, but I liked it. I did well. Then eventually, they went to the unit system.
Yep.
And I was assigned to Hampshire Franklin. And a lady named Betty Reed was the director of that. She was before, I think Michelle Ryder was director of the Berkshire unit originally. And they were like social workers. Betty Reed had been a nurse, but I think Michelle Ryder's a social worker, isn't she? She's not a nurse.
Correct.
So, but they kept consolidating everything. Everything, it was always moving people from one place to another as they got discharged.
Yeah.
Springfield was the biggest unit. Berkshire was the smallest. Hampshire Franklin, and then Westfield. Then they combined Hampshire Franklin and Westfield together, and so on like that. In the meantime, at that time, there were 750 geriatrics between G Building and AP. And they started moving the geriatrics all out to the nursing homes and stuff. So that made room to move some of the units, like in the old main building. They just shut them down because they moved them into the better buildings.
Yeah.
They brought them over, like Springfield unit was in G Building, which was probably the newest at that time.
Yep.
Haskell building, that was the old admission building before unit system, was probably the best built building. But I worked everywhere, so I went all over the place. There were 59 wards. I knew every phone number. I knew practically everybody that worked there. It was, so you have any questions?
Well, certainly. First, tell me what your first memory of the state hospital is like.
The first one?
The very first. And, yeah.
I'll tell you. This is a funny story. Okay. So I go to work in the kitchen down in Haskell building, right? And there's this other guy there that works there, Bushy. He was a character. I'm sure he's deceased now. I know he is. So he's this character. And the head cook, Pauline Turcott, she tells me, you go with him and he'll show you what to do. We get this, they used to have a truck, a food truck that went back and forth between Belchertown, Munson, and Northampton. And Northampton baked the bread and wrapped it and everything and sent it to those two places. Belchertown provided the milk, and the truck would come back with milk.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, right? Yeah. So we had to take the milk, and that was back when they had the big, I don't know what you call them, but milk cans.
Yeah.
The real big ones. So you had to take them off the truck, put them down by the walk-in refrigerator, and they had smaller things where you had to scoop out the cream off the top and put it in the smaller jugs that were steel, and you put them all in the refrigerator, right?
Got it.
So that was one of the jobs. So the other one is the truck would come over from the main building with all the canned goods. And they had big, what they call number 10 cans, the big ones like that, and it'd be like 4 in a case.
Yeah.
So we get all these cases. So you got a hand truck, go out to that truck, load the cases on the hand truck, and then there was a hallway outside the kitchen, and there were storage rooms, right? So you go in this storage room, and it's narrow. It's long and narrow, right? And you got to put the cans on the shelves, right? You take them out of the boxes, put the peaches here and the whatever there, right?
Yeah.
So Ralph, crazy bastard, and he says, come on, you stay out in the hall, I'll come in here, pitch him to me. He claimed that he tried out for the Red Sox and everything. And they didn't, he didn't get on, but he almost got scouted and taken in by the Red Sox, right? So he's, pitch him to me, throw him in, and he's catching him in the air and putting him on the shelf, and I throw the can to him, and I'm just doing what they tell me.
Right.
He missed one. 72 stitches right across his face when he got hit with the can.
Oh.
And
72.
yeah,
I had 13.
right. You know what I mean? So he cut the can right in the head. He bobbled it. What happened was he muffed it. You know, when I threw it to him and he went to catch it, he just muffed it and it hit him in the head, right? So they didn't fire me.
Right.
So that was like the first experience. I'm like, oh God, don't do what Ralph says. If Ralph says do this and it's stupid, don't do it. You know what I mean? But I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
That was like my first day on a job. You know? But I didn't get fired.
Yeah.
And then it got better from there in the kitchen. I mean, it was just work. You know?
Right.
Oh yeah. So,
yeah, that's pretty intense.
yeah.
I remember as a kid being pretty mystified by the scale of the state hospital.
Oh yeah.
But when I was a teenager, Old Main had been abandoned for years. So it was so completely different from anything else in the world.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Because they just kept building them in additions and built them out in additions. I don't know if it's still there, but when I was young, when I was going to nursing school and all back then, of course, as kids growing up in high school and everything, we hung out at the Forbes Library a lot.
Sure.
We had to go there a lot. It was before computers.
Right.
We didn't grow up in the computer age.
Right.
So up in the stacks, way the hell down in the back, on the second floor up on these high shelves, there were what they called then superintendent reports.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like books for every superintendent that was in charge of the hospital from the time it was built, originally in 1856, had to file this like report with the state every year. Well, they were up on a shelf in Forbes Library. And I'd get one down, I'd look at, and they had all these statistics, you know, like how many people died from tobacco and whatnot, you know, everything was different then. But the hospital, it started out as a very like philanthropic kind of place
Yeah.
in the beginning. You know, the grounds were beautiful. The main building architecture was really special at the time,
Yeah.
in the 1800s. And they'd come up with a carriage, and the people who came there weren't the riffraff, if you want to call it that. They were actually there for to get away. You know, they do that sort of thing to get people to go and take a break or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the doctor, psychiatrist, whatever, they'd go out on the lawn and sit there and have a nice chat and that kind of thing. So it started out with really good intentions.
Yeah.
The grounds were beautiful, the trees they planted from all over the world and everything. But it got out of hand, I guess, in the beginning of the 20th century, when they had poorhouses, things like that, and they were emptying people out, and they were taking in vagrants, and it just got, I guess, really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That was way before our time, long before our time, but that's how the place got so big, so out of hand. And I think they patterned everything out of the asylums in Glasgow, England.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they did the structures and how they thought of it and how they planned it and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you can go to other parts of the state, and there are, I don't know how they bought plans from architectures like Bullfink and things like that. Bullfinch, I'm sorry, like in Boston. And there are other buildings at other institutions that are exactly the same, kind of in, but they might look different because one of them's on the side of a hill. So it looks different, but if you went in the building, it'd be the same as one like Haskell Building in Northampton. It'd be the same thing.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
The old main building was built in the Kirkbride plan, and to your point, there are many other state hospitals in the Kirkbride plan, and that's the staggered wings that come off. They look like a bat wing.
And then as time goes on, they'd add another wing.
Right.
And go off on a right angle. And we used to call the floors like you knew everything because it all emanated from the center.
Yeah.
Right? So, and there are 3 floors from the center. This is the main building. So the first floor was called lower 1. Mm-hmm. Second floor, lower 2. Third, excuse me. 2. Well, it moved out like that. So then there was middle 1, middle 2, upper 3, upper 4, all that, and you knew exactly where they were.
Right.
So then there were the NIs. They were the straight out, way out there, the North Infirmaries. Yeah. Then they had the SIs, South Infirmaries, they put on there. Yeah. And at that time, everybody was, I don't know, they housed people either because of their severity of their physical situation, like NI2, or how belligerent, how hostile, how aggressive they were. You got put into, they were like pigeonholed into the units by those standards.
Right.
You're either physically disabled and mentally ill,
right,
or you're mentally ill and you're violent.
Right.
So you get spread out. So, of course, the best, I want to say best, that's a bad word, the least ill and the least violent and everything had more privileges, and they could go out on the ground. They were usually on the first floor, of course.
Yeah.
And they could walk out and had to be in at certain times and report and everything, and if they behaved. And they were, I guess we used to call them at the VA. I went from the state hospital to the VA.
Oh, wow.
At the VA, we call them Goldbergs in the beginning. You know, Northampton was a lot different, as you know. There were 2,400 patients at the state hospital and 1,100 at the VA.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's that?
Yeah.
3,500
Yeah.
psych patients in one town.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
different.
it's the industry that made Northampton really in.
Almost. Yeah, we were the biggest employer at that time, I think.
Oh, and for some time,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
there wasn't a big employer before Northampton State Hospital.
Not really. Yeah, not back in the 1800s. No,
Right.
no. I mean, others come along.
Yes.
Like now, I don't know if the biggest. Cooley Dick's the biggest
Huge.
employer now. Yeah,
Right.
probably sure,
Yeah.
but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't back then. No, and the VA was a big employer,
Yeah.
but they didn't start till the 30s.
Right.
That was like 38 when the VA opened. So,
Right.
well, back then they definitely were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you direct staff, indirect staff, all the
Yep.
services that
Yep.
they ran. Yeah, it was the big employer.
Yeah.
And it predates, UMass and Smith College,
Sure.
right?
Oh,
Smith
yeah.
College was 1875.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, when there's a painting from the State Hospital dome of, Paradise Pond and the
Yep.
Smith Athletic Fields,
Yeah.
and of course, there's nothing there but cows.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing
Yeah, that makes
before
sense.
the State Hospital.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's striking that it's the only way it could happen. But if you think of a state hospital as being the thing that funds the center of town, and then, things change, the industries change.
Oh yeah.
It's a history that is, by its nature, a little bit quieter than the histories of other things. And I am particularly interested in the change of population, the change of demographics, the change of
Yeah.
careers,
Yeah.
and how that shaped Northampton.
I think it also, there was a period before our time that the way the memorial buildings were built,
Yep.
before G building was built, and there's the C, D, E like that,
Mhm.
F, I skipped one. So they were built, you notice they all face south.
Yeah.
They all had great big windows in the front. You saw them before they tore them down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they had a double corridor inside. So the south-facing windows was a corridor. You could walk from one building to the other, and they're all on the same level. And in back of that were dorms for sleeping with the beds. And they had windows in the front of those dorms. They had windows in the back. And I think they were during the tuberculosis time. And it was more like a sanatorium than psych.
Oh.
And they had those great big old wooden wicker wheelchairs and everything. And they would open the windows, so they got the sun, the air, and everything, and it went right through, because the windows in the front would line up with the windows in the front of the dorm and the windows in the back of the dorm.
Right.
So the wind could blow right through, and they'd take them out there in the big wooden wicker wheelchairs, which we still had when I worked there, and set them in front of the sun.
Right.
In blankets and everything else. And I think Memorial Complex was more originated, I think, for that purpose, rather than it turned into psych. And it really changed during unitization. It really changed. Before that, it was better. But that was something. It was something, yeah. I remember that. We had, up in the main building, out in the center areas, before you went into the units, there'd be like these great big wooden wicker wheelchairs and stuff. Well, the director of nurses, Florence Eaton, during her time.
Yeah.
That's my time. Florence Eaton, she was a kook. She was smart, and she was tricky.
Mm.
Okay. She kept employees under her thumb. She would go around and she'd chalk mark them. She'd come back a week or two later, see if that wheelchair moved.
Right.
It better have.
Right, of course.
Or people were going to get screamed at, you know what I mean?
Right.
She did things like that. She lived down by Warnick's, down I think it's Clapp Street. I could be wrong. Down near the meadows.
Yeah.
She had horses and stuff.
Mm.
She'd come in. She always wore a white lab coat, but there'd be like horse hair, dog hair all over it and everything, right? And she had a Volkswagen Beetle, and on the weekends and stuff, she had the front seat was taken out so she could ride around with the dogs.
Huh.
She'd come up on the weekend and drive around, and you look out the window, and she's stopping picking up paper and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She was a character, but she knew everything that was going on. And it didn't matter, night or day. If something happened, like I was a supervisor then, and like if a patient died,
yeah,
right? Well, I'd have to call her up.
Yeah.
No matter what time it was.
Right.
But boy, you better have the answers. You better have already know what question she's going to ask ahead of time. And I got along okay with her. Once in a while, I'd get she used to send these little green notes pads. They were like the size of a prescription.
Yeah.
And it was green paper. And it was either going to be good or bad if you got one of those. You know, hopefully you got more of the good ones than the bad ones. But
for sure.
Oh yeah, that was something. But there were at one time when I first was a nurse, I mean, the level of care, I didn't know any better. What the hell? I was young, and those were the times. The level of care for those 2,400 patients, there were only 59 registered nurses, 24/7. Yeah. So that meant that sometimes, I mean, there's 59 wards, and sometimes there were only 6 or 8 registered nurses in the entire hospital.
Yeah.
And basically, the registered nurses were all basically supervisors.
Right.
Or a head nurse. So the LPNs they couldn't have managed without them.
Right.
And a lot of the LPNs back then were waivers. You know what they are?
No, I don't.
All right. They're trying to bring that back now, too. They may be bringing that back. Waiver LPNs were nurses' aides who had done really outstanding work. They were very good at their jobs, and they'd been there. They had experience and all. And so giving medication and stuff like that back in them days was pretty, it wasn't like barcode now, you know. There weren't many standards, and it was all bulk medications, and they just wrote a card out with the guy's name and what he was supposed to get and all that. But they elevated them to a status where they got a license from the state to be able to administer meds, and they couldn't do IVs or anything like that. We didn't do them there anyway.
Right.
We did clysis, hypodermoclysis. Only I don't know that they still do that with animals,
yeah,
but not humans.
Never heard of this.
You never heard of it?
No.
Oh. All right. Hypodermoclysis is you use like IV solution, like D5W, dextrose and water and all that, hooked up to an IV line, and a big needle. I mean, these used to be 3-inch, 18-gauge needles. And you put them bevel up, and you shove them up into the thigh muscle and just let it run slowly, drip down. And the muscles would either absorb the fluid or they wouldn't. And you could get some nutrition that way. When they didn't do IVs, that's what they did. and I got pretty good at it when I worked in AP. That when I started as a nurse,
Yeah.
I learned to do it pretty good, and I did them to people. But I don't know when they stopped doing that practice. It was probably when unitization happened, and they started sending people to Cooley Dick and stuff if they got sick, farmed them out.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping them, you know.
Can you walk me through what a standard day is like when you became manager? Like you're a young manager at Northampton State Hospital, a supervisor. So walk me through your day.
Well, I would say it started with shift change.
Sure.
Always started with shift change. First off, the supervisors gave each other a little report. That's typical of any nursing situation. You know, if they had some bad incident or there were people who were really sick, something like that, you know, out of the ordinary. Things are out of the ordinary. Not every patient, but just the highlights, right? So you'd have a little meeting 15 minutes before the regular staff would come on. Well, then we were their manager, so we didn't have time clocks, but we checked people in. Sometimes we had to reassign people because somebody called in sick over here and they had more staff over there. So you'd send them to another ward or whatever, just for the day. Yeah. You know, that sort of thing. Or you had to handle disciplinary things or whatever. So that was your first job, right? So then after all that was done, then there was the business of, we had, like I said, 59 wards. When I first started, I had a lot of area to cover. Yeah. So we would go out periodically and make rounds and go through and make sure people were doing their jobs. And, you know, or if they had any problems or what, you know, how's it going? You know, what's going on? Right. And we'd have meetings. We had to do a lot of scheduling. People are asking for vacation, a day off, this and that. So we had to make schedules. So you had some office work to do, and you had to commiserate with the other supervisors, you know, what they're doing. And we'd make rounds, probably more than once. Yeah. I was very attentive to the units. The other thing is, it was very typical, especially after we got beepers. We didn't have radios. They had the little pager things. Sure. And you'd get paged from employees on a unit would call the switchboard. Mrs. Driscoll mostly. Mm-hmm. Her husband was the fire chief in Northampton. Yeah. They had a bunch of kids. Yeah. And a couple of them worked there. Yeah. So anyway, they called Connie Driscoll, and she would page you, and then you'd know to call the ward or whatever. Right. And they needed something, either more medication for somebody that was acting out, or somebody's sick, so can we get some Tylenol or whatever, you know what I mean? And then it was our job to call the doctor. Sure. There'd be a doctor on call. And so I'd have to call the doctor, explain the situation, and get some orders, and then get back to them with the orders. And I'd go over, write the orders, have the doctor sign them later. We could do that back then. You can't do that nowadays. Wow. It's all on a computer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I was working at the VA when they got rid of paper. Mm-hmm. That was the first place to get rid of paper before hospitals. Right. Was the VA. Yeah. Went to computers first. I don't know if I can't say that's better, really. Right. I liked it before. Yep. But yeah, so that was pretty much. And then at the end of the night, it was checking people out. And, you know, that sort of thing.
It sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It was. Sometimes there'd be times, of course, there were only on evenings, the units, when we went into unitization. Yep. Each unit had a supervisor, right? But there were only 5 units. So that means there's 5 of us. Right. Well, if 1 or 2 are on vacation and one is sick or something, the next thing you know, there's only 2 of us for the whole hospital. Right. So, and we're covering each other's units, you know what I mean? So you'd come in that day and say, well, Bonnie's out. Bonnie Bluen, she was the supervisor of Berkshire unit. And whatever, Gary Thomas is out. He had Hampshire Franklin. And now, oh, well, which one do you want to cover?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we'd take turns or whatever, but we had to cover theirs too. So making rounds was a lot more than just my own unit. You know what I mean? I had to go take care of Springfield unit or something like that, you know, as well as mine and everything. So but they were always covered.
Yeah.
I mean, but the times there were only two of us. You know.
That's
As a nurse, when I was young, and I did things entirely different once I left there and went to the VA. But there was Mother's Day this one year, Mother's Day. Mm-hmm. And so I was just a regular nurse at the time. I just started out, and my supervisor was a guy named Glade Hall. Mm. He's passed away. And so he comes up to me. We were friends, actually. He comes up to me. He says, you know, Brooksy, could you do me a favor? This weekend, it's Mother's Day on Sunday. Could you come in and work the day shift? I always work second shift. Yeah. Could you work the day shift just so we can give a couple of the ladies a day off, right? Yep. Okay, I'll do it. So I work Saturday night till 11 o'clock, come in at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. I got stuck. They stiffed me so bad. I had to give meds to 750 patients. I don't know if that's a record. I don't know what it is, but it's insane in today's world. In today's world, it's insane. Yeah. You know what I mean? 750 patients. Right. There were only like 3 of us working that day. Oh. I came in to do them a favor. Right. Right. And, you know, they had scheduled as many as they could off. Right. They'd already had it down like where you couldn't lose anybody. Yeah. But then they just call in sick. Right. That was an infamous thing with the state back then. People just called in sick whenever they felt like it. They, you know what I mean, for a mental health day. Yes. They weren't that, you know, invested. Right. So they didn't care. And holy cow, it was 750, honest to God. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I had to do the whole south side. Right. And then go up to the main building, and I did part of that. Right. Up there, because there was only a couple of us doing it. And it was just line them up, and have the nurses' aides line the patients up and just go out and pop pills. Right. It was crazy. Yeah. Crazy.
It reminds me of a story. I worked at the Collaborative for Educational Services, formerly HEC, and they did teaching in the state hospital, right? Uh-huh. And John Paul, who was one of our educators at the Collaborative, he said that when he started, and he came into Northampton State Hospital for the first time, the teachers were in a room, in the room, and they were sharing calendars because they were marking up their sick days in advance to extend their vacations.
Yeah. When I was a nurse's aide, I got caught. Me and a couple other guys. This was back, I was like 19 maybe, you know what I mean? And what we were doing was we'd work 4 days, call in sick, right? But then we'd take an overtime shift, right? So we would end up with a half a day's pay more a week. Right. Right? We figured it out. If we called in sick one day, but we worked a double on another day because of time and a half, then we ended up with half a day's pay more. Right. And there was just a few of us. We were doing it for a while. Well, after a while, the bookkeeping, they figured it out. And it said, you keep doing that, you're fired. You know what I mean? But so we stopped. It was obvious, but it was a good racket for a while. I mean, make another $50 a week or something. It was a good racket.
Yeah.
Back then. So, no, I wouldn't recommend that. But there are a lot of people. When I retired from the VA, I know you're talking about the state hospital. When I retired from the VA, I had over 2,500 hours of sick leave.
Wow.
I never called in sick.
Right.
Hardly. I mean, yeah, once or twice a year maybe.
Yeah.
So I accumulated it all. And with the federal government, they don't pay you out, but they let you apply it towards retirement.
Oh, okay.
So I got another.
That's great.
Was over 2 years more in my retirement. So,
Right.
So I was able to get out a little earlier too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Oh yeah. Living up there and all that. Oh my God. I knew every inch of that place. Every inch of it. Had some scary times too. Didn't like I always worked in the evening, right? So during 1968 that was pretty much, I was my first year probably. And we had the Hong Kong flu.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever heard of that. You were probably 5. So it was like COVID. It got in the hospital. Of course, you're so crowded.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably wasn't really much worse for the general public than it was the Hong Kong flu. It was a very bad strain. Right. And it was a winter. That winter was like not a lot of snow. It was always like sleet and freezing rain and slush and all that. Actually worse weather for sick than when it's just cold and dry.
Right.
Cold and dry is better. So we had an outbreak of Hong Kong flu in the winter. And the conditions are so crowded then. I mean, with 2,400 people, you had rooms. This room would have like 4 beds in it. Yeah. I mean, the beds were back to bed, head to head, or foot to head, whichever you want to call it. And they were only about 2 feet apart.
Right.
Right? So you'd have a room like this would be like a 4-bed room. I'm not kidding. You've seen the rooms up in there. You went up in the old main building. You know how small and narrow those rooms are in there? Okay. So people were dying left and right. We'd have to go in. I mean, I had to go in you'd have a stretcher out in the hall, and we'd have to go in and sideways between the beds and carry them out and put them on a stretcher. Right? And they'd purple. They turn blue. It's like the COVID thing. They would literally get this horrible pneumonia and die and drown from it, So we were taking them over to AP, and back then they didn't have any kind of nasal oxygen or masks or anything. They used tents, the old oxygen tents, because we had crib beds.
Okay.
You remember the crib beds?
Certainly.
So we had the metal crib beds. They put the tent, old plastic, over the crib. Okay. And then you had a big, tall, 100-gallon green oxygen cylinder next to it, and ran oxygen into the tent to help them. Half the time it didn't work. But,
right.
We had so many people dying. Well, then employees started getting sick, of course.
Of course.
Right? And it was mostly the older people and so on, and people with families, whatever, calling in sick left and right. So now we're young and healthy. I was 18, 19 years old. I was really in good shape. So we're working double shifts all the time. Well, we're getting twice the exposure, and we're getting burnt out.
Right.
So I got it. I was sick as a dog. All I remember, the guys coming, because I lived in the attendance home, and some of the other guys came in, pulled me out of bed, because I was just soaking wet, sweating and everything, pulled me out of bed, threw me in the shower, changed my bed or something, threw me back in bed, gave me Irish coffee. That's all I remember.
Wow.
For a couple days.
Yeah.
I was just like gone. But I was young and healthy.
Yeah.
So the next year, they came out with the flu vaccine.
Right.
And you could go down, they called it surgery. It wasn't surgery, but that's what they called it. And there was a woman there that worked there all the time, and she was an LPN. And you just show up at the door and she'd give employees a flu shot. Well, they were giving them to the patients, but you'd get the flu shot, right? So I went down to this was in the center, the main building on the second floor, where the dentist's office was. Yeah. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I have pictures of it.
Dr. Hall pulled a tooth out of me while I was working there.
Yeah.
He was a good guy, Doc Hall, right? So I go down there, and I took a group of patients to Dr. Hall's office in there. And on the way back, I stopped at surgery, and I got the flu shot.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So then I go downstairs with the patients, walk into lower 1 north. I didn't make it to the nurse's station. It was like a little room like this, and there was a nurse there, an LPN, Randy Barnes, in a white uniform, sitting in a chair. I walked in the door, and I said something like, "I don't feel good." And I went head first, right in her lap, head first. Boom, on the floor. The next thing I know, I'm on the floor looking up, and there's all these people around, Florence Eaton and everybody, all these people around me, and they got an oxygen tank and everything else. And they said, "Don't you ever get another flu shot the rest of your life. Don't ever do it." They sent me home, said, "Go home and rest and take it easy."
Allergic
I
reaction?
have never had another flu shot since 1969. I will not take the flu. I'll take everything else. You know, COVID, whatever, I don't care.
Right.
But flu shot, I ain't trying that. Not now, because I had an anaphylactic reaction to it.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
And presumably it's because I had it the year before, and I built up some kind of antigen antibody reaction or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'll never do that again. We had some crazy times like that. At Dr. Hall's office, it was nice. It really, for a dentist, it was in the front of the second floor, front of the main building.
Yeah.
And it was very sunny. It was on the south side of that main part up there.
Yeah.
And it was nice and sunny, big windows, all that. And I remember it had like a wainscoting around the walls. And he had straight wooden chairs for the guys to sit in. You bring people down there like 6 or 8 at a time, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't do one at a time. They did, you know, a bunch, right? And so he one of the dental epoxies or something, he put there's like this little ledge on top of the wainscoting. So he epoxied a buffalo head nickel on it on purpose. And there'd be some guys, you know, the ones that you could set them there, and a guy'd be sitting on a chair, and they're all trying to pick that nickel off. But it kept them occupied.
Right, very focused.
Distracted, you know, like that. That was funny.
Oh.
That was funny. Did you ever see the movie Session 9?
I sure did.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I say that to people, and they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah. Well, I was an explorer of asylums at that point in my life.
Oh, yeah.
So Session 9 is, of course, about Danvers State Hospital.
That's right.
And my colleague in research covers Danvers State Hospital. Yep. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
It is. It is. I love that movie. Is something else. Yeah. And actually, it reminds me of that, you know, the coin thing, like when they find the coins. But the tile and everything, the grading and the tile and all that, that's what I was saying before.
Yeah.
Danvers was built like Northampton. Yeah. Parts of it. I mean, they're not all the same because the buildings are done at different years and whatnot. The VA's like that too. They're Bedford and everywhere. They have similar buildings to like Northampton and all, you know.
Got it.
But yeah, that's quite a movie. I'd love to see it again someday.
Yeah, it's been some time since I've seen it myself.
Yeah.
It, the obviously the cleanup, the asbestos removal. It's
Yeah.
actually, I mean, it's actually kind of comical that it's a horror
Yeah.
based on that, because it's like asbestos removal is so constant for state and federal buildings.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh wow, that's
Yeah.
never even considered that.
But there was some kind of like spirit. Well, they made the. Did you ever see the movie In Dreams?
Yeah.
Well, they did that at the VA.
Mm.
Parts of it, not
Really,
all,
yeah.
not all of it, but a lot of it. The part where she climbs out the window and runs down the woods and all that stuff. Oh yeah, I was working there then, and we used to go over and watch them make it. They started, and they were there, and then they didn't come back for a couple of years, and then they came back to finish it. It was weird. So, but a lot of that was done there. Yeah.
So, in your recollection of the state hospital, is there something that you feel everyone or the history of the state hospital should include that isn't known from your experience? Something that isn't quite as understood?
I'm not sure. I had an intimate relationship with the state hospital, really, being, almost like growing up there and becoming an adult and getting married and all that stuff. I was going to school after I was going to school in the mid-70s there at Westfield, because I wanted to get a degree in clinical psychology. And Geraldine Perez, who I mentioned, her husband was a professor over at Westfield, psych professor. And I did a lot with him. I did clinical psychology interviewing, like what we're doing almost, but I did it with employees.
Right.
And I recorded them. And then we'd go over it later with him. It was like verbal, nonverbal, all kinds of stuff, So I got too backed up on bills and things, and I had to work other job part-time. I've always worked more than one job.
Yeah.
I've always had a side job, and then I was trying to make money, but then I had kids. So there went the school.
Yeah.
So things had to go, I even had to get rid of one of my motorcycles back then and so on, But that was because eventually we had kids, and I just couldn't work 2 jobs and keep going to school. So I never finished the degree. I was almost there, like maybe another semester or 2, but I didn't. Yeah, but the state hospital was quite a place. The patients had so many characters. I mean, I still remember their names and, and all that, things that they did. There were so many characters.
Yeah.
And you got to know so many people. It's unbelievable.
A world unto itself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Completely, right from admissions to the morgue and everything in between, everything. That was what I didn't like doing when I had to take patients to the morgue at night by myself through the tunnel.
Yeah.
That was an experience. Yeah, just go down the elevator and go through the tunnel and go over to the Haskell building. Yeah, no, half the lights are out in the tunnel.
Right.
You've been through that, the main tunnel?
Yes, I have.
Is there much of that left anymore, or did they really take it out?
Well, so the last time I was there was before redevelopment.
Okay.
And it was wide. It was a car wide.
Yeah. Well, there's a tunnel below them too.
No.
Oh yeah. Well, right where the tunnel went, because in the winter when it snowed, you could see it melt.
Right.
Well, the steam tunnels at the VA do the same thing.
Yeah.
But down as you went down the hill down towards the power plant.
Yes.
And then underneath, I do remember going underneath a memorial complex,
Yeah.
and there was a sub-basement
Oh.
level. I got stuck in that freaking elevator one night,
Oh.
taking the laundry down. Well, you do this like 10 o'clock change of the patients.
Sure.
And the incontinent patients, you know, change their sheets and all that kind of stuff. Well, you had these big laundry baskets full of dirty, stinking laundry. Oh my God. And the last thing before the night shift came in, one person had to take the laundry down to the basement and take it to the laundry room. There was a room, you just threw it in there in piles, right? And then the laundry'd come pick it up in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, they had this old elevator. I was working on C2 over there. They had this old elevator I want to say it was in D building. I think it was D. And it's the kind where you got to have a key for the door, and then it's got the accordion steel, a freight elevator, right? So I go over there, go in, bring in the laundry, stinking like hell. It's my turn, you know. It's just before shift change to go down the basement. Frickin' elevator kept going. It went past the basement and kept going into the pit. There was like a pit below it.
Oh.
And it's going in there, and so, you know, the floor level is up
Yep.
here.
Right.
And you can see a little bit up there. You can see people walking by, and now they're doing shift change.
Right.
Well, the supervisor's office was outside there, the night supervisor, right? And people are walking by, and I'm down here in the basement, you know, yelling, right? Oh my God. So they had to there was no way I could get out.
Yeah.
And it was hot. It was in the summer. It stunk. So they had to get I think it was Norm Menard was electrician for the hospital, but he lived like in one of the state houses nearby. So they got him, the cop went over, got him, the cop brings him back, and he did something up there with a key. He had a master key or something that he could do, and they opened it, and I had to climb out. I climbed out. Shift change was 11. I got out about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, but I climbed up and got out. And I don't know, they would have fixed it the next day, or they would just lock the door and shut it, you know. Right. But yeah, that was fun. That was a fun time.
That's terrible. I've never even thought of being stuck in an elevator with dirty laundry.
Yeah, that was the bad part. Yeah. Plus, everybody's leaving. I'm like, hey, I want to go home, you know. And they're up there, but it all came out okay.
Good times.
Yeah, there were good times and bad times there for sure. A lot of wrestling with patients and things that happened that were horrible. And I had a few bad suicides. But, one particularly bad one. It was very sad. And to this day, I can't understand what the superintendent did. To this day, I can't. It was supper time. And all the patients went in in a type of order to the cafeterias. They didn't all go at once, you know what I mean? There would be one building would go, then the next building, and so on, staggered, and then they go back. So the other supervisor, Geraldine Perez, I was at her office talking with her while all the patients on her unit had gone to supper.
Sure.
So there was just her and I there alone.
Yep.
And apparently they didn't do a very good job, the attendants didn't do a very good job of sweeping the unit and looking in everywhere, right? Well, across from her office, across the hall, was a shower room. And a woman she had been a nurse, she had been an LPN. She hung herself in there. Went over, opened the door, and she was hanging. I tried to pick her up, all this kind of stuff. Jerry goes and calls for help, and Bill Goggins was the boss at that time. He had taken over the hospital. You've heard of him.
Yeah.
And we thought an ambulance or something was coming to help, on the way. He canceled it. He canceled it. And I don't know if it was because, you want to keep it hush-hush, things like that, you know what I mean, rather than to be in the news. I could never understand that to this day. I felt really bad, was a nurse. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. Those are the kind of things that give you nightmares.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, But on the other hand, I saved a guy from doing it once, too. I was just walking through a ward. I was just walking down a hall. It was at night, like 9 o'clock at night or whatever. And I was turning a corner, and down the hall in a cubicle, I saw a guy tying himself up.
Yeah.
Just out of the corner of my eye. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And I went down and made him stop. But could have been another one. Just things happen all the time up there, all the time.
Yeah. Just
a lot of fights,
State hospital is a different world.
Oh, hell yeah. It was, especially when you're, very understaffed.
Yeah.
Really understaffed. I mean, compared to modern times, that was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were stories from the 50s, I don't know if it continued to the 60s, that there were so many patients that they simply didn't have enough beds. So there were rotating patients from bed to, for sleeping into the day room so that another patient...
No, it wasn't. It was crowd. I'll give you an example. On NI2, there was this one dorm room. It was horrible. These guys, they actually had the one imbecile that was ever in the hospital, guy named Merritt Fasano, and he was an imbecile, and they're very rare. But we had lots of patients in those days that had childhood illnesses and things like rheumatic fever. Really screwed up a lot of mentally ill people because of the fever that they had, and it would burn their brain cells and all. So you could have this perfectly normal child to 2 years old. She gets rheumatic fever back, I'm talking like 100 years ago, and she gets a rheumatic fever and fries her brain, and now she's essentially like retarded or developmentally disabled for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And she ends up in an institution.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of people like that. But this unit, NI2, they had this one room. It was so crowded. What we had to do when they got the patients out of bed in the morning, right? They did it systematically. They were crib beds, and they pushed them all aside. They take the dirty sheets out, they push the beds aside, and they keep pushing them aside. So you take this big dorm room, and I don't know, there were like 48 guys in there or whatever, and they pushed all the beds to the side, and then they had tray chairs. Back used to have the tray chairs, almost like this, but not quite. And they put them in a chair and tie them in with a sheet, right? And put them all in a circle and everything. And we'd feed them in a circle. We'd feed 3 or 4 guys at a time. Okay, and then at night, had to do just the opposite. You'd take them out of the chair, put them in the bed, and then move the beds out gradually. There will only be like this much space between beds.
Right.
Right? And that's how crowded it was. So all day long, they're in the chairs, if they can't walk, and all night long, the whole dorm is full of beds, but they're only like that far apart.
Yeah.
So there was this one guy there. I don't know if I should say this on the mic. There was this one guy. I don't know how he got so crazy, because he was a very smart man at one time. And he was this big, tall, older guy named John Singleton. And he'd be there at night, and he'd poop himself, and he'd take it and he'd fling it across the dorm. He'd throw it, and guys would get hit with it and everything. You didn't get hit if you were an employee, but I mean, it was crazy stuff like that. I mean, it was that crowded.
Right.
You know, it's a wonder they didn't bunk them up and down. But no, we never had bunks. But we did have to move beds to move people.
Right.
That kind of crowded.
That's,
so.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Like I said, when I went to G building, when I first became a nurse, there were 80 patients.
Yeah.
There were only 3 of us taking care of them, a nurse and 2 aides.
Yeah.
For 80 people,
right.
Of which half of them couldn't walk. So, hey, you just did your work, you know?
Best you could do.
Yeah, you did. As best you could. I mean, I don't know, today, I couldn't exist that way, but, you know.
Yeah.
Missions was a hard area to work. Because before unionization, everything was done like systematically.
Mm-hmm.
People, like I said before, they were pigeonholed and categorized and all. So the Haskell building was the admission building. 2nd floor was women and the 3rd floor was men, like that. And of course people came and they stayed there right away. And if they were belligerent, they went to the back unit, which had a lot of seclusion rooms and had guys that could fight,
right,
so to speak. We had to fight our own battles. That was the other thing back then. It was other places like the hospitals that nowadays have security, and they call the local police, or they have a team that are on pagers or beepers, radios, whatever. That's what the VA does. But, you know, in those days, you were pretty much on your own. You had you were lucky if you could find another guy that's down the hall to come and help you and all. So it was a pretty hostile environment in those crowded wards where the guys were, you know, like paranoid schizophrenic and all that. I mean, we had some pretty damn bad fights.
Yeah.
Pretty damn bad ones. And you were working almost on your own. So you had to, I mean, I could say, well, there was a lot of violence in the state hospital, but a lot of it was just defensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were some guys when I was young that were older, and they were there. There was this, a notorious unit before our time, way before it, like you were saying back in the 50s or whatever, it was called the bullpen.
Mm.
That was when they had hydrotherapy and that kind of stuff. And they didn't have the drugs.
Right.
They didn't have the drug, not psychiatric drugs. I mean, I guess you can give people sedatives or whatever, but they didn't have, you know, Thorazine or anything like that.
Right.
Back in them days. So it was very combative before us. But, you know, if it wasn't for the drugs, that's for sure. I'll tell you that, makes a big difference. But then they turn some people into almost like zombies.
Yeah.
You know, that's the downside of that. But
and that's the thing with the decentralization. It seemed like the budget switched just to pharmaceuticals and not to care. It's like, you know, we can keep.
Well, that's the outpatient way.
Right.
For sure. But the problem with that, particularly, it depends on the type of patients they are and what their diagnosis is and everything, really. If you get down to the nitty-gritty of everything, beyond the environment, beyond their finances and everything else, some people will respond well to medication. And if they're supervised or they are cooperative and everything, and they continue to take their medications, or they adjust it a little bit here and there and all that, and they'll be fine. It does work. It can work out in the community. It can, absolutely. I believe it can. But you got two categories that don't work good, and that's paranoid schizophrenics and manic depressives.
Right.
So the paranoid schizophrenics, you know, they hate everything and hate everybody, and it's everybody else's fault and everything else, right? So they don't follow the medications. They don't like the feeling that it gives them. It knocks them down, and they're not going to take their antidepressants or whatever, you know.
Right.
And the same way happens with the manics. The manics think, oh, after they get stabilized, when they come off an episode of being manic, and they get stabilized and they're on lithium or something, you know, meds, and it's going along okay, and then they decide one day they don't feel like they need it.
Yeah.
Or they don't want to take it. Not in a hostile kind of way, but just in this like, I don't need that. It makes me feel crummy, or it gives me diarrhea or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Any kind of excuse, right? And they stop taking their meds. And what happens? Same cycle happens over and over. We used to have people, you know, come and go. It was like a revolving door with psych.
Yeah.
Because it's the same people over. They go up. They get in good shape. They get calmed down, and everything's going good. And then stop taking their meds.
Right.
So outpatient needs a lot of supervision. The last thing I did as a nurse before I stopped entirely, after I retired, I went and worked for ServiceNet for a while, a little bit, not much. And I went to see people at their apartment or their house or whatever, wherever they were. It was my job. Go around, check in on them, check their vitals, check their meds, that sort of thing, and do a little report and all. And I liked it. I didn't mind it. That was okay. But they gave me this horrible computer, and I'm not a computer person. And they gave me a laptop to use, and I could go out and go see 6 or 7 patients in the morning with my own vehicle, go do everything right. And then I'd have to go back to ServiceNet and go on this computer and write these reports. And it was horrible. I hated it. I hated it. And it made it shrank the money too, because if you're not good at computer stuff, you waste a lot of time trying to figure out what you're doing wrong rather than just getting it done.
Yep.
Right? And so instead of making $17 an hour or something, you're making like $6 an hour.
Because
like,
it's taking a long time.
yeah, I'm not going to work all day long for, this. This is bullshit. I hated the computers.
Right.
I just hate computers. I'm still no good with them. So that was what took me out of it. It was just like, took me out. And I had another job. So, because I've always had second jobs.
Well, I have good news.
What?
Now the computers think for themselves.
yeah, right. I know it. They're going to be telling us what to do. Yeah. For sure.
Oh, they're already making art and writing for us, so
yeah. Hopefully
they'll be playing golf for us next and doing all the fun stuff.
They won't be riding your motorcycle for you.
So that
or you'll put on goggles and think you're riding a motorcycle.
Right. It's like, why even bother?
That's what you'll be doing.
Exactly.
Right?
The insurance is a lot cheaper that way.
Yeah,
anyway.
you won't get hurt.
Yeah.
Sit there and put the goggles on. Yeah.